Well, hello there, and welcome to the Sky Guide for IFAS and the Irish Astronomical Association. Back in March, I lost my voice when I had a second bout of COVID, and then I lost the use of one eye. But I'm sort of back to some sort of normality now. Eyesight's returning slowly, and I can speak. You'll be pleased to hear. So, well, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in September, because it's an interesting time of year. First of all, not least because all the clubs get back together, and this September is a particularly good example on the grounds that many of us are getting back together for the first time in 2.5 years following the COVID pandemic. So let's have a little look. First of all, the usual thing, the sun, and the sun itself is improving, certainly. Here we go. Here's the sun. There's a lot more on that than there was last time we did this back in February. We've now got some very active sunspot groups. 3085 there has been sending out coronal mass ejections. 3086 here, and then there's something quite big coming round the limb there, I would say. So there's more activity coming. And this rather weird sunspot, 3088 here. Most sunspots break into sort of two parts, of positive and negative magnetic areas there, and they alternate from one sunspot cycle to the other. So that's how you can tell when you've changed cycles. But this one here seems to be about 90 degrees rather than the usual one in front of the other thing. Now, we're not sure whether that's something unusual going on in the sun or not, but it's well worth keeping an eye on 3088. Just on the stats, since we last looked at this, we have actually had one spotless day in 2022, which we weren't quite expecting. But if you look back, it's an 11-year cycle, and 11 years ago we had 2 days spotless in the year, so that's not out of character. And the current stretch of spotlessness, well, is no days because there's plenty of spots there. So this is as of the 26th of August. We'll keep an eye on the sun as we go through September. Now then, I mentioned this before, and it's worth just reiterating that the original predictions were that sunspot cycle 25 would be like this, which is to say much the same as 24 before. 24 wasn't bad, but compared to the three big ones before that, 21, 22 and 23, cycle 24 was a bit of a minnow. We did get some nice auroras out of it, but it could have been better. They're rethinking 25. It does seem to be taking off more quickly than we had expected, and this is the most optimistic revised prediction, the Macintosh prediction for 2020, which is sort of saying, well, this could be right up there with 21 and 22 even. Give or take a fair margin of error, but let's wait and see. But it is looking quite promising. Now, there have been some quite nice auroras already in cycle 25, and this one was taken on the 20th of August by my friend Alistair Hamill from County Antrim. So this is not Iceland or Norway. This is County Antrim, and so that's looking really good there. We've got the plough up here, and some nice pinks and some nice greens there, and beautifully reflected in the water as well. That's terrific. And this is a good sort of time to be doing this, because there is a thing called the Russell-McFerron effect. That comes into play around about the autumnal and vernal equinoxes in September and March. And that is where the angle of the Earth in relation to the Sun is such that the solar wind just gets a bit more easily guided into the upper atmosphere, so that you get good southwards BZs, as we call them, your nanoteslas, and generally gives us better than usual auroras around the two equinoxes. So being as we're now at the end of August, coming into September, we are right at that time where we need to keep looking north. Just to give you a little bit of a pointer about how to look at all this, there is a page on the IAA's website, irishastro.org, called Aurora-current-conditions. On this page, I've pulled together all the data sources so that we can actually see. This is the magnetometer from Lancashire. This is the weather forecast for Belfast, and these are all the graphs of the magnetic fields and so on. More information there. There's a very good Facebook group called Aurora UK. If you're on Facebook, that's worth joining. There is, of course, the big daddy of all the websites concerned with auroras and space weather and stuff, called spaceweather.com. That's run by NASA in the United States. AuroraWatch.lancs.ac.uk, that is where the magnetometer information here comes from, and there's a lot more on that website. And one to look at, to give you an early warning of if there's actually an aurora happening, CliffCam3 at shetlandwebcams.com. That always gives you a picture, and you can very often see the aurora there, obviously, before we see it as far south as this. So that's really what I have to say about the aurora borealis. Hello there. Now we're going to just have a little look here at the planets. And I've set the date here for the 15th of September at 9 p.m. in the evening. So this will give us the evening view. Then we'll move on a little bit and give you the view later. But going through the planets here, Mercury at its altitude minus 13.5 is not visible, nor Venus, nor Mars at that point. Mars will appear later. Jupiter is sort of rising in the southeast, 101 degrees azimuth, just below, just a little bit south of east. And its altitude at that point 8.3 degrees, so that'll be coming up on the eastern horizon. Saturn a bit higher, a bit further to the south, 13.5 degrees there. It's a good time to see Saturn, because Saturn is just past its opposition. That happened on August the 14th, and Jupiter is just approaching its opposition. That is to say, it'll be at its highest at local midnight, which on the 26th of September is still 1:24 in the morning or thereabouts. Uranus is just coming up in the east. Neptune is a little higher already in Aquarius, Uranus there in Aries. And if you really want to pop at it, this is not a terribly bad time to be searching out Pluto. Pluto is in Sagittarius. It is at 11.6 degrees altitude. At that point, just coming up to south, so it'll be a little higher than that when it is actually south in Sagittarius. At magnitude 14.3. I am told, and I have never seen it, that you can see Pluto just about, if you really know what you're looking for, in a sort of 20-inch, 26-inch Dobsonian, something fairly monstrous like that. Or, of course, with a well-pointed camera and comparison to star charts, you'll have to see it. You can probably watch it move over a few nights if you get a few clear nights in succession. So that's where we are with planets in the evening. Now let's just advance things a little bit more to 3 o'clock in the morning here. In fact, I'm going back to 3 o'clock in the morning on the 15th of September there, and things change there. Now Mercury and Venus still way below the horizon. We're not seeing those at the moment at all, and Mars, however, is well up at that point, 37.9 degrees to the east, just south of east there, 107.7 degrees. Jupiter is much higher now, 34.6 degrees, and that is just slightly west of south. And then in the southwest, Saturn is setting. It has been higher than that all evening, but it's down to 4 degrees there and is effectively setting. Uranus and Neptune are both well placed as well. 46.5 degrees in Aries, you'll see Uranus. Magnitude 5.7. Some say they've seen it naked eye. I never have. But certainly binoculars or a small telescope will enable you to see Uranus. And likewise Neptune. Neptune is not at all naked eye visibility. It's just not bright enough. 7.8. But, small telescope will show you Neptune quite easily. It's quite easy to photograph as well if you know where you're pointing. It's in Aquarius. It's 28.4 degrees higher there, and that is in the southwest. So that's really where we are with the planets. So let's go and have a look at the deep sky. Now, something else that you can see in the sky is the International Space Station. Now, we have been hearing some slightly dubious reports that the long-term life of the ISS might be coming to an end before too much longer. It was only actually, it's been up there since 1998, the first bits of it anyway, and it was expected to run until 2024, which is only 2 years' time. They're sort of pushing that out to 2030, but there comes a point where it's old and creaky and leaking and so on, where it will no longer be viable. And one other thing that has made things a bit difficult is that the spillover from the conflict in Ukraine and the sanctions applied by the West to the Russians and so on, is that they're sort of saying, well, we're just going to stop sending rockets up to it and build one of our own. We'll have to wait and see, because that would be a great shame. It's been a fantastic piece of engineering, done good science, and looks magnificent in the sky. There are early morning passes from the 27th of August onwards, 5, 4, 5, they're early in the morning, and those go through until the 10th of September, and that's the end of that sequence of morning passes. But not to worry, because shortly afterwards, starting from the 15th of September, we've got a whole series of evening passes, and they're generally much more practical to see. They're not necessarily better, but it's a 20, 21, 22, 20 better times of the evening to actually see it. And some of these are quite high up. I mean, here's an early high up one. 19th of September goes up 35 degrees from Belfast. Some of the 45 degrees on the 21st. 49 degrees on the 23rd. And of course, all those high up ones come with a bright latitude as well, magnitude rather. This is minus 3.4 on the 23rd, and that's about as bright as the ISS gets from here. And you're looking at it from this sort of latitude, about sort of 400 or 500 kilometres away at its very closest, and that's the space station, and right through to the end of the month. And then it starts to fade a little bit into October, and that set of passes finishes there on the 3rd of October. Now, looking towards the deep sky, one of the things that's particularly interesting to us is where the moon is, because trying to observe faint deep sky objects during a full moon tends to be a bit difficult. So here we are with this. As the month starts, we're into a waxing crescent up to the first quarter on the 3rd of September. Then the moon gets bigger and brighter right up to the full moon on the 10th of September, and then it starts to fade away. Now, you can start doing some early evening, i.e. as soon as it gets dark, deep sky astronomy from round about the sort of 15th, 16th, 17th onwards, because the moon doesn't actually rise until much later in that phase. So although it's still quite big and bright when it comes up, you do get a period of darkness before the moonrise, sort of certainly around last quarter. It won't rise till about midnight. So and then it's sort of you have to be up early in the morning to see these later phases of the moon, and they are no bother at all to deep sky astronomy. So let's go and have a look at a few things. The Milky Way is looking fabulous now, actually. This is a photograph that I took myself from the Antrim coast, my home in the Antrim coast, just a couple of nights ago, actually, late in August. And here we are. We've got the summer triangle. We've got Deneb there, Vega there, Altair down there, and then we're sort of looking down towards a little bit towards sort of Scutum and so on down the bottom there. That's as much as I can see before I run out of horizon there. My sky here is fairly dark. There's you'll see a little bit of light pollution. That's the direction of Larne, just over to the left of the picture there. This is looking roughly southwest at the Milky Way here. I took a few more. This is another one I took. I took this and I sent it off to this website, nova.astrometry.net. And that's interesting, because what this website does is it analyses your wide field pictures and then works out what you're looking at, and it comes back with a nice little map overlaid on it. And that's very interesting. It doesn't work with every picture, I find. So certainly the previous picture I showed you, this one here, I did actually send that one off to Astrometry, and it wouldn't resolve it, presumably, I think, because the two roofs at the bottom there get in the way, and it confuses the data matching. So, but that's very interesting. Right, what we'll do now is we'll just fire up Stellarium, and we'll have a look at the deep sky. So here we are under our perfect dark sky here in Larne in County Antrim, and I've set the controls here to be 9 o'clock in the evening on the 15th of September, i.e. in the middle of the month. And we have a look at the sky. We've got a great sky here with the Milky Way running right through it. That Milky Way goes right down into Sagittarius. Unfortunately, we don't see the core, the real core of the Milky Way. That's much further south. And actually, if you really want to see the Milky Way in all its glory, I can thoroughly recommend a trip to the Southern Hemisphere, where you not only see you're looking into the centre of the Milky Way. You see it much better than we do. We're looking outwards through one of the spiral arms, but you also see the clouds of Magellan and a whole different set of stars, and Orion upside down and stuff like that. So do go to a dark site in New Zealand or Australia or South Africa somewhere in your lifetime if you get the chance. But coming back to where we are, now we have here the three bright familiar stars of the summer triangle higher up. That's Deneb, Vega and Altair, and there's a whole bunch of interesting objects inside the summer triangle area there. Getting down into the clouds of Scutum here, that's about as far as you really get a good horizon here. Of course, our viewers in Cork and Southeast Astronomy get another couple of degrees below that, so you see more Milky Way, and of course you've got a view over the sea as well, which makes life easier. So the guys down south, they get better than we do up here in the north. Let's go in here and have a little look at here. First of all, let's have a go at Sagitta the Arrow. We'll zoom in on Sagitta. It's going to let me do that. What is there? And Sagitta gives you a good impression of an arrow. There is also a globular cluster in Sagitta, and that's it there, called Messier 71. Let's go and have a centre up of that and have a look at it. There we are. That's a nice globular Messier 71 in the middle of Sagitta, which is well worth a look. We'll come out and have a look at some other things in that area. Vulpecula. Now then, Vulpecula has in it, it's got one of my favourite little asterisms. I love this one. This is the coat hanger. And you sort of find it is just in Vulpecula, and you sort of find it, it's up a bit from Sagitta or down a bit from Albireo, Beta Cygni, which itself is an interesting object. Let's go and have a look at Beta Cygni. This is a really good star for showing new people to astronomy. I've actually seen people, sort of look at. I've shown them Jupiter and Saturn, and they go, "Oh, like they're a bit small, aren't they?" But that's because they're very far away. But for some reason, Beta Cygni impresses people. It doesn't really show up well on Stellarium here, but it is a double star, and you can just about see here that one star is a bit golden. Actually, through the telescope, it's very much golden, and the other one is a sort of beautiful sapphire blue. So that's well worth having a look. Coming out a bit further and heading up into Lyra. Now then, here's the shape of Lyra the Harp. I think you can just about see that bright star Vega there, and this sort of little triangle here. This star here is an interesting one. That is Epsilon Lyra, and what's interesting about that is it's a double star. There we are. You can see it's a double star, but you see the little caption here is coming up saying it's a double, and that's indeed what it is, because when you zoom in much closer, a little Max Sutov Cassegrain telescope will show you this. That is obviously a double star, a very tight double, and likewise the other one of the wider double set, that's also a double star. There we go. Okay, so that's Epsilon Lyra. Well worth a look. Now while we're in Lyra, let's come and have a look down here, and just between these two bottom stars of Lyra here, we sort of zoom in a little bit. And right there is a little nebula. It's very tiny. The Ring Nebula. It's a planetary nebula, that is to say a star that has thrown off its outer shell. And you can still see the star there in the middle. Some of my photographs actually see the star. The star is actually about 15th magnitude, but the nebula as a whole is 8th magnitude and quite easy to see in a fairly small telescope. But it is relatively tiny as planetary nebulas go. Let's go and find another planetary nebula. There is one. Here we are. There it is, Dumbbell Nebula M27. And that is a rather larger planetary nebula. Again, it's a star that has thrown out its outer gases and is leaving a sort of a white dwarf at the centre. And that's it. So that's M27. So that's a quick look around just one part of the autumn sky. I hope that's been helpful to you. And what I want you to do is keep looking up and stay safe.